Used to, just about everybody that had a farm had tobacco allotment on it. Around East Tennessee, that's one of the best cash crops has been. It's all for money. It helps pay the bills. A check always comes in about Christmas time. You wait all year for it.
Roy Saunders is sowing the seeds for what he hopes will be a good year. But it'll be one of hard work because Roy and his family are tobacco farmers. The tobacco season begins in February with the planting of the tiny tobacco seeds. They're mixed with cornmeal so you can see where you've planted. The canvas cover protects the seedlings from the frost of late winter. In May, the tobacco sprouts are large enough to transplant to the fields.
I always try to find the easiest way out in the way, cut down on the hard work and everything, but some things are just so much work in, regardless of how you go to do it. Seems like the more you pull, the more comes up. Just be sure you get the biggest ones now. I guess we should get ready to go set these out before it rains, maybe. There's not that much farming going on anymore. Too hard to work. You got to get out there in that hot sun. Yeah, you can't get any help. Yeah, all out here by
But Roy Saunders does have help. 4 generations of it. Tobacco is a family business on this Dutch Valley farm. Even his mother puts in just as long a day as everyone else.
Let's go this bin there. That'll keep us busy the rest of the day.
Until a few years ago, this is how the Saunders set out their tobacco, with an old but trusty hand setter.
Slow today.
Now you catch on that while. Just about out of water. And plants. That'll get us going again now. Keeping you busy, ain't it, boy? You'll catch the next one here now. Here you go.
Today, Roy uses a tractor to set tobacco. Although it's a little easier on the back, it's still slow work.
If you get out there in the field, you just out there with Mother Nature, and it's just altogether different feeling. Independent feeling. Makes you just feel good. Fresh air and sunshine. And something different every day. A lot of hard work, but it's different.
But the really tough work of tobacco farming lies ahead for the Saunders family. We'll return to this Anderson County farm during the year as that work begins. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry. Caves abound in the East Tennessee area. But few provide more clues to our past than Bone Cave in Van Buren County. Its depths have yielded prehistoric animal remains, Indian artifacts, and a glimpse back into the strife of a civil war. I'm Bill Landry, and today we'll visit Bone Cave here on the Heartland series. Bone Cave was formed millions of years ago during a great upheaval, but the waters that carved the maze of passageways have long since departed. This cave is dry, and this fluke of nature helped form our history. Its namesake was found in 1811, the bones of a giant ground sloth that was probably washed into the cave by a prehistoric sea. The constant temperature and low humidity of this arid cave left the bones well preserved, but it was the soil itself that really allowed Bone Cave to make its mark in history. It contains a mineral called saltpeter, the primary ingredient in gunpowder desperately needed by the South during the Civil War. By the light of pine torches, as many as 300 men worked around the clock and supplied the Confederacy with 25% of its gunpowder. One of those men was Benjamin Sparkman, a slave, who not only worked in the cave but had to live there until providing gunpowder was a lost cause. His daughter, Etta Cummings, remembers the stories he told of hard work, no sunshine, and little food.
He was just put in there to take care of him, keep him the rebels or whatever, Yankees, I believe it was, from taking him off.
The passageways Benjamin Sparkman roamed for 2 years of his life haven't changed a great deal in 120 years.
This was a skyway, built it as an elevated wooden railroad. They would dig up the soil back behind us in the cave and come out on this railroad track and dump it into this cart. That's an old hoe that they used to dig up the cave soil with. You can see it was made like in a blacksmith shop.
The carts took the soil to the vats that were supplied with water through an elaborate system of hollowed-out logs. The water dissolved the saltpeter into a solution collected from the bottom of the vats. After the water was boiled out, only the saltpeter remained. But this system of digging and hauling the soil took its toll on the men who lived below the earth. Many died in this cave after being forced to eat, drink, and breathe in a world full of dust.
They'd slip out in the night and get that corn. Just anybody's field, you know. And they'd bring it there, and they'd chuck it and drop it in that saltpeter. They boiled it in that saltpeter.
What must that have tasted like?
He said it was terrible.
Do you want to go in that cave?
No, I don't. I just feel like I'd just be like my daddy was, just almost the same. You stay in one hole way back in one place 2 years, it gets old.
I'm standing here on the Cumberland Plateau, higher than the surrounding area because of this, sandstone. It's water resistant, caps the plateau, and prevents erosion. Without it, where there's limestone, for instance, wind, water, and time carve away the rock to form a new landscape. Perhaps the most dramatic example of this has occurred here, in Sequatchie Valley.
Just below Crossville, Sequatchie Valley begins its 200-mile journey through Bledsoe, Sequatchie, and Marion counties and down into Alabama. It is called an anticline, a valley sculpted from a massive fold in the Earth's crust. The huge compression caused the limestone rocks at the top of the fold to weaken and crack. The forces of erosion then had free rein to go about their work. In Sequatchie Valley, that work has been nothing short of spectacular. There are only 2 other places like it in the world, one in Iran and one in South Africa.
It's a wonderful place to live. To be sitting in a place where you look to a mountain on each side.
Those mountains rise 1,000 feet above the valley floor, which is only 6 to 8 miles wide for most of its length. The narrowness of Sequatchie Valley keeps it hidden from view, an isolated discovery. Where once a gigantic mountaintop stood are gentle waves of green. The power behind this awesome change is the Sequatchie River. Small, silent, almost motionless, it seems hardly up to the task of moving mountains. Yet its handiwork is a testimony to the relentless forces of nature and of time.
So the people that first came here had to be rugged individuals. What do you think made them stay here?
I think probably they liked it. It also could be that it was so difficult to get in, it might have been equally difficult to get out.
There is a stillness here, as if the entire valley had taken on the meandering pace of the river that formed it. The railroad didn't come to Pikeville in Bledsoe County until 1891. Now it's abandoned. Today, State Highway 127 cuts a solitary path into a valley that continues to remain nearly isolated. Like many East Tennesseans, the people of Sequatchie Valley know that isolation can be a source of great enjoyment.
It's quiet, a lot of fine people. I suppose when I go to the city, I miss a lot of the sights of the city, and if I'm in the city very long, I miss the quiet and enjoyment of living in the country. We have a long twilight every day.
Born of cataclysmic change, the gentle beauty of a rich, green valley remains. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
Ouch. Oh, that was wrong. Don't want to do this again. Hi, Mr. Brock.
Hi, Billy.
Hi, Mrs. Brock.
How's your mama?
Well, she's still a little bit sick.
Hey, Billy, how's it going? Where's your girlfriend?
I don't have one.
Why, you're old enough to have a girlfriend, boy. Where's that Andrews girl?
Oh, Herschel, don't be kidding him.
Oh, just kidding a little bit.
Miss Brock, can I have a bologna sandwich?
You can. You want onion on it?
Just mayonnaise and bologna.
Don't put that down, Billy. It might make you sick. How high is your corn now, Ethel?
Oh, it's about knee high.
Mine's not hardly that high, but it's come along pretty good.
Shoot.
Been a lot better. That hail tore it up.
All right, that hail eat mine up too. I'm telling you, it really ate it up and everything. Come back here, Alan. I want to see if you know what this is back here.
Yep, right there. Uh-huh.
Hey, Billy, what are you doing with that sweet-smelling stuff?
I'm looking at it for my mom.
Man, Sam had a real casket down there and a dummy in the casket. So he would invite visitors to go down and look at kept his meat in the basement. He'd invite them to go down and look at the meat and what have you. So a little light would come on in the coffin lid, and this dummy would raise up.
Scare them all to death.
Scare him to death. So he got a couple of ladies down there one time, and one of them fainted on him.
15 cents, Billy.
Well, it was funny for him to start with, but after that fainted, it like to scare him to death. You know how come him in the Marlowe community?
No.
You know when he come to the Marlowe community?
Hi. Hi. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Brock.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Fine. Hi, Billy. Hi, Tammy. How are you? Fine. How's your folks? They're great. What you eating? Nothing? I gotta go. Bye. Okay, bye.
That boy, I'm glad it's family.
He possessed a trait that would forever mark him as unique. There was no better shot in Fentress County than Alvin York. He could hit a crow at 200 yards, and from 50 he could shoot the eye out of a turkey. And this ability gave him an advantage one misty morning during World War I. For half a day, the 20th century and its modern war were captives of a simple foot soldier. Alone, Alvin York silenced 35 machine guns and took 132 prisoners from France's Argonne Forest. He returned to a hero's welcome and offers that would make him a rich man. But Alvin York didn't want to glorify war.
And he felt bad killing. See, he didn't believe in killing. And he just said something had to be done at that time. And when he saw his buddies, it knocked out his whole company, all but about 3 or 4 men. And when he saw his buddies falling, see, and killing all of them, he said he knew he had to do something.
All Alvin York wanted to do was to come home to the simple life he knew and to live it according to his Christian code. But as much as he wanted to forget the violence of war, his fame and friendliness made it impossible.
They was a stranger ever since I could remember it. When I was a kid, there's hardly ever a day failed but what there was somebody here stopping, taking pictures, and wanting to meet Daddy. He'd invite them in here. If there was 6 of them or 7 or 8, he'd invite them in here for lunch.
He had returned to the lifestyle of his fathers, full of simple pleasures and hard work. But the 20th century finally caught up with him. In 1940, Alvin York finally permitted a movie to be made to inspire patriotism on the eve of World War II. He understood dying for his country, but not paying its taxes. With interest, Alvin York ended up owing the government $23,000 more than he ever made on the picture. And any money he did get was spent on his fellow East Tennesseans. At his own expense, he started a school to educate the mountain children and a program to improve the poor Fentress County roads. But as much as Alvin York tried to overshadow his acts of heroism with simple deeds of kindness, he would always remember that day in the fall of 1918.
We was on the point of the Granville Mountain here on top of the cliff right at daybreak and looking down through the valley here, and it was foggy kind of that morning, and he told me, he said that reminded him of the Argonne Forest.
He said it wasn't him, it was somebody higher than him that helped him do what he done.
Alvin York's spirit of generosity still lives today. After his wife of 45 years died last fall, this old home place where all 7 of the York children grew up was given back to the state at his request. In spite of all his accomplishments, he never considered himself any different from any of the rest of us. Perhaps that was his greatest strength, and why Alvin C. York of Pall Mall, Tennessee, is a symbol of the hero that is in us all. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
In a dappled haze in Grundy County, high atop a peak overlooking the 7 ridges of Collins River Valley, we found him, in a home surrounded by wildflowers, the delicate Beersheba spirea and the vibrant flame azalea, heralding at once the peace and power of his poetry.
It is a body of work that is captured in the music of simple words, those of a mountain poet. I'm Bill Landry for the Heartland series with the verse of Leonard Tate, the poet of the Cumberlands.
Jars of pickles, row on row, of fruits and jam in the cellar cool, the lilies by the walk that blow, lemon and beautiful, smooth ironed, with scent of lavender, the linen, as she stacked it there, piano keys that sang of her, the rail of the stair, the waiting leaves of a half-read book, needlework, unfinished strands. Wherever I turn, wherever I look, her hands, her hands. We came into a grove in spring when trees and we were young, the tastes of love and maple sap, ambrosia on the tongue. As lovers would, we carved our names upon a budding tree, enclosing them with twining hearts for every one to see. For lack of rings with which to pledge this love that found a name, a growth ring from a maple tree our lover's knot became. Love makes time pass. We felt no need of ardent words to say, and darkness came for us too soon on that red-letter day. In later years, at summer's end, I found that doted tree. Time makes love pass, and nothing seems the way it ought to be. Instead of names, the maple bore unsightly scars, revealing our wounds inflicted in its side had been a long time healing. The growing pains of youth and tree cannot be counterparts. Growth rings had overgrown our names and circumscribed our hearts. The poetry of Leonard Tate has appeared in over 50 regional and national literary publications. The power of his words takes in the full range of our experience. Yet his themes always seem to return to a common subject, the mountains and their people. We are mountain people. We are a boorish set, they tell us. Hard-bitten, coarse of feature and of speech, shallow and brawling as the mountain streams, with morale friable as our sandstone. All my life I have wanted to tell them that we are mountain people, that mountain streams have pools of deep quietness, and that beneath the sandstone of our hills there is granite. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
Get back. Now behave a minute. I can't help you being muddy.
Meet Ethel Birchfield. She lives in a hollow on Roan Mountain in Carter County. That's her husband, Joe. He's a champion fiddle player. We'll hear from him later. Right now, we'd like to introduce you to a national treasure, a direct link with a past that is all too quickly fading from our midst. Ethel Birchfield of Roan Mountain.
I just always like to sing, tell tales.
Ethel also likes to tell riddles. Many are over 600 years old.
Well, I got up last Sunday morning to view my Sunday tree. There I saw a unity kern sitting on my tickle present. I sent in my son visit, Dr. Physics, to bring me my feather fan. Shoot that unity kern sitting on my tickle present. Now what was? And that's as simple as spitting off folks. It is.
The answer is a red bird sitting on a rose bush. We still haven't figured out how we guessed it.
Who told you these?
Lord have mercy, I don't know. It's been so long, brother, I don't know. I was a child when I learned it. Stick in its mouth, stone its throat, guess this riddle I'll give you a goat. It's something you read a million one of, and he has, and I know I have. Cherry.
A cherry.
A cherry. You see, they have this little stem up there, and then the inside is something you can't chew up, just to hear that. That's a stone. I love the mountain. I really do. And I want them to buy them in the woods. The woods don't do it. I love the woods.
Well, you're talking about like you're going to be buried next week.
Brother, it's just like this. We don't know when we're going to do. Well, now, that's right. I hope to live a long time, and I want to be with the people. I hate to die and leave the people. I really do. I love to see people friendly, and I like to see people talk to you and things like that. I don't like the people who think they're better than nobody else. Do you? Well, to get up and dance, and not be drunk, or not be with drunkards, or no bad turns on, things like that. I don't see he'd be any harm to dance. I enjoy life, all right. I certainly do. And I circle the unbroken.
Ethel Birchfield may be the only one left who knows many of the tall tales and riddles she tells. But music is still her first love. It is a brand of music that has been nurtured in a family from a simple home on Roan Mountain. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
By the window on a cold and cloudy day, when I saw these herds come rolling just to carry my mother away. There could be a
There he is. There he is. Coming right at. All right. Yeah, come right in his face. Right there. Whoa! It broke. Greg, get that heavy line down here. There he was. Right there he was. Watch him, Greg. See him making that trail out through there? He just moved about. Yeah, he didn't go far. Hold the pole there. Just keep, now don't pull the hook towards me. Keep him up off the bottom if you can. This leg. He's a good one. Oh. There we go. Got one, whether we ever get another or not.
They're one of the oldest creatures on the face of the earth. They've watched the dinosaur come and go, but the turtle has changed very little in its 200 million years of existence. Meet the East Tennessee snapping turtle, an animal whose title is well-deserved.
Anything that moves in front of that head, they're going to eat it. You know, whether it's a duck or a fish or plastic worm or whatever it is, they're after that movement. We were fishing up on the Emory River one night, and I was just small then, and I caught a catfish, weighed about 4 pounds, and I was real proud of that, you know. And there was a turtle, just a humongous turtle, and it reached up and with one bite took half of my 4-pound catfish.
They can bite you, I'd say, at least 2 hours after they're dead, with the head chopped completely off. They're tough. They're a mean disposition.
Old-timers, you know, they tell us that if they won't ever get the hold of you, he don't turn loose till it thunders. I saw my dad get bit one time. Dad was hollering for him to get pry his mouth open, get his finger out. My cousin run up and started going, trying to make it think it was thundering. I guess he thought that'd make it turn loose.
Which one of y'all can cook that thing?
He can.
I can cook at it.
He's the cook.
If he cooks it, would you eat it?
Well, sure.
If I cook it, you'll eat it.
Oh, I will.
Right.
Well, let's try to cook that thing up and see what it tastes like.
All right, let's go cook some turtle. You gonna grab it there, Greg?
Now you'll get about 4 pounds.
You want carry? Probably about 4 to 5 pounds meat there out of that.
He nipped my leg out there.
Did you get the leg on it?
Like it's ready to go.
Yeah, it's looking good. Try one of those, Bill.
Hey.
It now. It's liable to bite you.
Eating your own catch is an age-old way of living, and it's a perfect way to end a successful day of turtle hunting. This East Tennessee delicacy tastes like a cross between frog legs and chicken, I'm told. It's good. It's a little chewy. I think I'll have another. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry in Morgan County. Save that big piece for you, buddy.
Kelly Lewis is picking apples for his wife, Oma. It's the only part of making apple butter she'll let him do.
After it comes on into the kitchen, then, I take care of the rest of it.
Well,
This is my territory in here.
If this Anderson County woman looks familiar, she should. Earlier in the year, she showed us her honeybee hives. We're back today to see how she makes her award-winning apple butter.
You can make apple butter and apple jelly both out of this a batch of apples. Slice them and put them on and put so much water over your apple, and then you cook them maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Then when you get they're done enough, you take them off and you run them to just pour them in a sieve.
How are we doing in there?
Okay, you've got it. Then you just start measuring apple butter. If you make a large batch, it takes it longer to cook it down, but my mother used to make it in an outside kettle, big old wash flat kettle. And she used to make pumpkin butter, like two. That's what we had back then.
Pumpkin butter? Is that good?
Yes, it's, better believe it, it's good. See, now there's 3 cups. I'll just make a small batch. Sugar. Okay. Then I'll put this on the stove.
Oma knows what she's doing in the kitchen, and in the home for that matter. She's won hundreds of ribbons from county fairs throughout East Tennessee. At last year's fair in Clinton, she won 22 blue ribbons out of 36 events.
Yeah.
It smells awful good.
Well, it is. Apple butter's awful good. Not quite done.
How can you tell?
Well, it's not quite thick enough.
It's like candy.
Now put your red hots in there. There. It'll make it pretty and red and give a flavor to it.
It tastes like cinnamon.
It will. Now see, those leads are good and hot. Take your time. Don't try to rush through it. Because anything you go at and just rush through it, you're not going to do as good. Well, at least they're getting rain some other places a lot of time, maybe. Help their beans.
I imagine it's operated ever since that hill raised from the beginning of time, because it's just always burbled there. And way back in old deeds, it was named Crystal Springs. A good many people come from Harriman and get drinking water from there, fill up jugs, because it is better than tap water.
There's Montvale Springs, Line Springs, Carson Springs, Tate Springs, Whittle Springs, right here in Knoxville. These hotels drew a very fine clientele. They came to get the mineral waters. It was a spa, a resort.
When it's hotter than July in the good old summertime, East Tennesseans have always relied on their water. From the spring house that kept the milk from spoiling to the luxury health spa that attracted the elite from around the world. Regardless, their purpose was the same, to enjoy the cool, clear, always refreshing, sometimes purifying watering places of East Tennessee. I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland series.
I can remember that the iron water set your teeth on edge and the sulfur water smelled like rotten eggs. These were mineral springs, you see, and during the 80s and 90s, they were very popular.
People came from all over the South to escape the heat, mosquitoes, and malaria. Mineral springs of East Tennessee were an oasis, and Tate Springs here in Granger County was one of the most famous.
Oh, that Tate Springs Hotel was something else. It was a 4-story hotel that ran around 300 feet across with wide verandas. These porches ran around 3 sides, and they had gingerbread balconies and cupolas.
Guests were awakened to the tune of Hot Tate, Hot Tate. It was the first of 3 doses of the heated mineral water they would receive that day. Any more of the remedy might result in the quick step. But medicinal values weren't the only attraction at the resort.
Many a girl came to one of these watering places, hoping that perhaps she would meet some handsome swain who would squire her around the ballroom floor, and maybe a lasting romance would develop. If one can daydream, he can see the resorts as they were, and the couples dancing, the very essence of youth and romance.
This water attracted money, but fashion is fickle. In later years, fire destroyed many elegant watering places. A trace is all that remains. Other watering holes were never so grand, their purpose simple but steady.
None has ever been better than this. Selma claimed we always had running water. She said she and Hal did the running and kept water at the house all the time. Now you can get your water.
Well, it's beautiful here.
Well, it sure is. It's one of my favorite places. Come up here in Southwest Virginia and East Tennessee.
The Powell River, one of a dwindling number of free-flowing streams left in our area, the home of the mussel. At the turn of the century, this simple creature provided over 11,000 East Tennesseans with jobs in the pearl industry.
A lot of mussels pulled out of Anderson County at one time, wasn't there?
It sure was. It was a major point for pearl collectors. East Tennessee has the richest remaining mussel fauna probably in the world, except for the Amazon region, which we don't know a whole lot about. I brought this water glass along. We might be able to see some mussels here. We can look as we walk along. By some accounts, the river bottoms of East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee were just literally paved with mussels. Let's see what else we can find here. Oh, there's some more dead stuff down here again.
Is this a bad sign? Are you finding a lot more dead stuff up here today than
Finding
normal?
a lot more dead stuff over the last 2 years. We know that they're excellent indicators of the environment. We know that if suddenly they die off, that your drinking water could also be imperiled as well. This mussel's dead. But look what's rolling around in it.
That's a pearl?
Yeah, that's a pearl right there. A white thing.
Ooh.
Isn't that pretty? I've heard a lot of people talking about opening up, thousands of mussels and only finding 1 or 2 pearls, and the value of the mussel itself far outweighs the value of the pearl.
11 species of mussels found only in the East Tennessee region are now extinct, and 6 more will probably become extinct in our lifetime.
Going back to the 30s when they built all these dams, nobody realized the impact it would cause to a lot of the fauna. There's a lot of work that's being done, but it's like anything else. It takes a tremendous amount of money to turn around problems that have already developed.
Today, cutting open an endangered mussel carries a $10,000 fine, the same penalty as killing the bald eagle, our nation's symbol. And the mussel, the symbol of clean waters of East Tennessee, faces deadly threats.
All the black material you see is coal that's washed down from the strip mine and deep mine areas of southwest Virginia. Well, in 1979, we observed the Powell River to be running black for a whole week down to the back of Norris Reservoir. That's a distance of about 125 river miles.
So there might be mussels underneath all this.
Mussels are probably buried.
So they're dead?
They're dead, yep. Mussels really have a lot going against them.
Do you think the mussels themselves as a species is sort of doomed?
They may be if we don't clean up these rivers.
Here at the Ramsey House in East Knox County, history is being unearthed, literally. It's not an interpretation of history like you'd find in books. It's a history as real as the earth from which it comes. Dr. Charles Faulkner is our guide as we visit an archaeological dig in progress. I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland series.
The Ramsey House was built in 1797, and we're out here trying to find the outbuildings or the service buildings that were associated with the Ramsey House in the late 18th and early 19th century.
Like the smokehouse? Or
Yes, especially his office, Alexander Ramsey's office. Let me show you one of the first units we opened up here. What we see here is a post hole, which we think is fairly early in the history of the site. The reason we think this is because it intrudes through this level of limestone and glass down here, which we think was laid down perhaps when the house was built or perhaps when a building was torn down in this area. And a lot of this early glass was found down in the post hole. Here's a piece right here. You can see it's very thin, and it's typical for the late 18th or early 19th centuries. Let me show you another unit over here, Bill. Oh, good, she's found something. They didn't have garbage disposals or trash disposal units back in the late 18th century, so they just threw things out in the yard. Something real interesting here, Wayne. It looks like a piece of red cat's eye creamware. It's either a cup or a bowl. See the paintings on the outside. If it was on this side, it would be a plate or a saucer or something like that. Let me show you another unit over here, Bill. This might be some kind of a foundational stone below this trash pit. We thought that might be the remains of a building, but let me show you one of the most interesting and I think important things we've found out here. This is a brick construction that when we first found it we thought was the remains of a porch because it had been laid into a builder's trench. We know this was done around the turn of the century because of the fact that the bricks are machine-made. But in talking to local informants, I now think that this is probably a sweet potato bed that was put in here around the turn of the century. Why you would build an elaborate bed like this, I'm kind of curious. I don't know whether this has ever really been formally recorded. You always find the unexpected in archaeology. You never know what you're going to find under the ground. And it's all important, of course, whether it was something that dates 200 years ago or whether it's something that only dates 50 years ago. It's exciting to me because really when you look at the history books and you look at the past records, we know so little about the daily life ways of people who lived in this area. We'll take the information that we've gotten from the ground and analyze it, and then we'll make recommendations for future archaeological work, which we hope will be done here. So much of this is lost. Our folk traditions, our folklore, our material culture, folk material culture, all these kinds of things. It's all the remains of past human activity, and that's what we're trying to record out here. Okay, let's get in.
Right. I'll get you.
Oh!
Yeah.
You know where we're going. I hope.
Is this water? Oh, it'll give you a good thrashing. Oh!
The whitewater rivers of East Tennessee. They have names like Nolichucky, Hiawassee, Watauga, and Ocoee. They are every bit as proud and majestic as the people who named them. Their challenging twists and turns have names too. Slingshot, Double Trouble, Diamond Splitter, and Table Saw. They're what give East Tennessee whitewater its national reputation.
Well, each river has its own character. Rivers are like people. They're all different.
Whoa, what is this?
This is the beginning of Double Trouble. Welcome to the Ocoee. Here it comes. Look at that. There it comes. You still with us, Bill?
The doldrums, a quiet place in the rowdy Ocoee. Time to relax, to catch your breath. The calm before the storm.
Okay.
Now is when you have to start listening?
Yeah. Okay, you see directly ahead of you that plume of water?
Yeah.
That's the saw. It's like a saw spinning funnel.
Whoa! Uh-oh!
Oh! Ah! There's the saw right on your right. Here's the pipeline.
Oh.
There,
Good
see, there you
Lord.
get a downstream view of the saw. See it?
This is the last big one. Hell's Hole.
Hell's Hole.
Standing with that big wave.
Yeah.
We're going to go right up over that and right into the hole. Whoa! Ah! Right out.
downstream after you've made it through Hell's Hole, river guides will tell you you've just been introduced to the Ocoee. Indeed we have. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry. In 1863, East Tennessee was in the grip of a civil war that had become all too personal. The great armies of the war were fighting elsewhere, nameless, faceless rows of blue and gray, clashing on remote fields of horror.
But here in our region, the war was being waged in backyards by neighbors and even families who had worked together and worshiped together. Now they were sworn enemies. Enemies with familiar faces. It is in such desperate times that heroes do emerge.
Stonewall Jackson, Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee are familiar names to us now.
But in East Tennessee during the Civil War, the name of Daniel Ellis would become known throughout the land. I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland series.
He was a captain in the Federal Army, but he rarely served with his regiment. Daniel Ellis chose a much riskier career. When the Confederates were in power in Upper East Tennessee, Daniel Ellis helped Union men escape their troubled region and join the Federal forces.
He was a rallying force. He carried mail and hope between the Union lines, those men who had escaped and their families. He would bring money and mail messages back to those people.
On one of his many trips between enemy lines, Ellis came upon two women from Washington County. They were in search of food for their small children. They had traveled 15 miles by foot to get it. Ellis gave them what money he had, and they were very grateful for it. Not a bold, heroic deed, but a compassionate one of many that endeared him to his home folks.
Ellis was a hero to his fellow Unionists, but to the Confederates, he was a marked man.
There's another case where he hid in a hollow log, I guess up on Clinch Mountain, and the Confederates came in and actually sat on the log in which he was hiding. Narrow escape after narrow escape.
One of his greatest escapes took place while he was visiting his home in Carter County.
During this visit, Ellis and his friend Elbert Treadway were surprised by a platoon of Confederate infantry.
Take that out!
Outnumbered 10 to 1, they found themselves pinned down in dense woods. The rebel fire was drawing closer. Elbert Treadway seized the moment. He shouted battle orders to an imaginary column of men.
Come on, man, move it up over there.
Soon the dense woods were ringing with the sound of 50 men. The Confederates fell right into their trap.
Run for it, boys, there's too many of them. Fall back!
Daniel Ellis had defeated death once more.
It is said that Daniel Ellis helped 10,000 Union men escape to join the Federal Army. For safety, he chose to work alone, traveling thousands of miles on foot. In the course of the war, he received no pay for his efforts, and his home was destroyed by the Confederates. Among the great heroes of the Civil War, a little-known man named Daniel Ellis ranks at the top of the list. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
Okay, gang, let's get it.
You want to take one roll apiece or two?
I think we'll just take one here.
Okay.
Let's get you a roll and get them tops. Pop it down about eye level. And main thing is get them suckers.
It should have been done 2 weeks ago. If it hadn't been so rainy. Wet weather's made these things grow. Might have an axe cut them out.
The longer the day gets, the longer these rows get. They don't get any shorter as the day wears on.
Now I can get this sprayed so these things won't come back now.
We last met Roy Saunders as he was transplanting tobacco plants from his seed beds to the field in the first step of the tobacco season. In the heat of the August sun, the tobacco is rapidly maturing, and Roy and his family are ready for cutting time.
Whenever you top the tobacco, see leaves will be small on top, and you pull all the suckers out from an inch up. This was a top, and this was a sucker. See how much bigger that sucker was than the original stalk. And they grow fast. We should be able to find a worm here somewhere. Yeah, here's one. You can see where he's eat a big hole in the leaf there. Use the same sprayer to spray for insects as you do sucker control. We're going to pass on. Yeah, this is between these here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. David just driving us a stick here. One boy is nice here on the end. That's big tobacco. All right, long way good.
Stuff gets sticky.
Yeah, by quitting time, he wants to be a professional. Oh, I got to sharpen some hatchets real good. A lot of times we'll let it sit out at least 1 day, up to 3 days, and let it wilt down good. That way it won't be some brick on bricks easy, and helps handle it. Gets pretty heavy putting top of the barn. Whenever you sell tobacco, you want the pounds. They buy it by the pound. And if you got more weight, you get more money. The heaviest and hardest work is cutting it and getting it in the barn.
Is there anything harder?
I don't know. Work's work.
After the Civil War, there were no schools for the black children at all?
No.
Not until Mrs. Stern came.
You just had to do the best you could do, you know. Be strong. Couldn't go in and not be strong.
Freedmen, they were called. Lincoln, the great emancipator, had said so. But for the 9% of East Tennessee men and women who were black, freedom was a long, hard road, and their only chance for it hinged on one thing. I'm Bill Landry for the Heartland series, and this is the story of the education of freed men.
Today, Morristown College stands as a monument to the determination both of its founders and the 15,000 black children it has served.
In 1860, it was a slave mart. Ironically, it was in this same one-story frame structure that Elmira Stearns and Judson S. Hill began their mission.
She arrived in 1869. Elmira Stearns was a Christian missionary with a calling to educate the newly freed slaves. The Holston Methodist Conference sent Dr. Judson S. Hill from Chattanooga in 1881. Together, they endured harassment and ridicule for 100 children in a one-room schoolhouse. The tuition?
Bringing in beans, cabbage, onions, anything he had. He never turned anybody down, Dr. Hill. He kept the school going by begging, different people for money, asking them to donate.
He always took a music group with him. He did the talking, yes.
They did the singing.
Did the preaching.
The training of young people to be self-respecting and self-helpful, that was the goal. To achieve it, Dr. Hill chose Andrew Fulton, professor. He would now teach in the same building where as a child he once was sold as a slave. Relationships between whites and blacks was still a delicate affair. Dr. Hill soon realized teaching Latin was fine, but his students needed skills and jobs that wouldn't threaten white East Tennesseans.
You have 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 feet, you've got what it takes. So use them, use your mind with them.
It does make you strong. It has made us strong. It made us want to do.
After 50 years of dedication to a race of freed men and an ideal, Dr. Hill died in 1931. With a thirst for knowledge, 7-year-old children from as far as 100 miles away came to what is now Morristown College. Some of them stayed for as long as 8 years, for there was nowhere else for them to go. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry. The Great Smoky Mountains, an oasis that supports more life than almost anywhere else in the country. A rainforest, an island of protection where nature has been allowed to take its course. But rain clouds of another sort are gathering over these mountains, clouds laden with elements of destruction.
These clouds here are just, particularly at the lower layers of the clouds, they are where the most high degree of concentration of pollution occurs.
Trees rare to our region line the Smoky Mountain ridgetops, and it's these trees that suffer the most in their cloud-covered habitat.
What we have here are tree cores. Those are growth rings. The higher up they are, this was at 6,500 feet, right up on Klingman's Dome. This one, 1,000 feet lower, 5,500. This one has slowed its growth more dramatically than this.
The Smokies earned their name and image from a humid, haunting mist that sweeps down through the valleys, a mist that today is probably manufactured miles away.
The reason that you can't see, the chances are, it's due to air pollution. Some of it comes from the Tennessee Valley, some of it comes from the Ohio River Basin, where all those power plants are spewing out sulfur from the coal burning there.
The beauty of the Smokies may be a curse. Millions of folks who come here to bask in the mountain's serenity may help cause this great forest's decline. Particles in the air from car exhaust and power plants are brought down to earth at the beginning of a storm in the form of acid rain. And in a survey of selected national parks across the country, the Smokies showed the second worst acid rain problem in the country.
People I think, are a little upset when they watch the sun set into the pollution instead of the natural horizon. What's the future like for these woods? Well, the future here is very much in doubt. And what concerns us so much is that 5 or 6 years ago in Germany, they were just beginning to notice the kinds related, not exactly the same, but related kinds of symptoms in their spruce and fir trees. And 5 years later, they're showing a very, very high mortality rate. It's such a powerful place in so many ways. It's powerful spiritually.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa. Whoop, whoop. Get in there.
What happened to the black team? Let's let them rest there a while. Huh? Just put them straight out through there and let them rest.
Oh, gee. Oh, gee. Oh, Brandy. Gee, Missy.
Yes, sir. It'll make it tough. Needs a lot more of this. Yeah, we do.
What's there's coming on?
Now, wait a minute, boys. Your dog's going to sit at the same time.
I'm getting loaded.
Its roots are here in the rich soil of our region. Through the centuries, it's provided East Tennesseans with a remedy for their ailments, and during hard times, a way to make a living. I'm Bill Landry for the Heartland series. Today we're going hunting for ginseng.
It's said to quiet the animal spirits, strengthen the soul, expel evil, brighten the eyes, and open the heart. And it's during the fall of the year, the time of harvest, when East Tennesseans head for the hills in search of ginseng. Harold King's relatives swear he's lived before. How else could this Anderson County man know so much about digging sand?
Why is this a good spot?
Well, it's rich. It's real rich. Leaves got a lot of humus built up, and it'll really grow a lot of rocks and stumps. Cut up here some. Put that stem back in the ground. The last week in September and the first 2 weeks in October is when it really turns gold. When they talk about the gold in the hills, that's the gold of the Tennessee hills. That's beautiful.
But it's on the other side of the world, where most East Tennessee ginseng is shipped, that the root is most valued.
The Chinese highly prize our wild ginseng. Got a good, strong taste. They eat it. They eat it. Eat it, drink it. Make tea. Make tea out of it. They use it just for a cure-all. The Chinese says we've been selling our health for 3 centuries. I can't really say that it has any medicinal effect on me, but I've chewed it for years,
And I do know that it will, it'll soothe the stomach ache. It keeps you from being nervous.
But East Tennesseans use this root for a much more practical purpose than feeling good. Ginseng got them through hard times.
During the Depression, you make more then digging ginseng in a day than you could working. Ginseng during the Depression sold for around $7 a pound, and you couldn't make but $1 a day working on a job.
But it's not the money that takes Harold King into the woods. It's a yearning in his soul.
I've got a good job, and I don't have to do it. I do it because I just like to do it. Just like my grandfather and my grandfather's father. And it's just a hand-me-down. It's in your blood. You can't get rid of it.
Tell you, molasses has been a lifesaver back through the years for people when they didn't have no sweet stuff and such as that to go along with. You couldn't buy sugar, you didn't have the money. But I'll tell you, when a man gets to the place to where he's learned it all, he ought to be allowed to make molasses. I learn about them every day.
How many years have you made it?
I made molasses over 55 years ago.
And Ray Schuler hasn't changed his methods yet. He probably never will. He's just as stubborn as his assistant.
Here, Jack. Come on, son, you ain't got just another round or two and it's over.
Ray cooks his molasses in 3 different stages. That way he has a batch ready every couple of hours. And the more he cooks, the browner it gets. The bitter green juice is boiled into a foam that rises to the top. That's where the skimming is done. And according to Ray, that's the real secret in making molasses.
You wouldn't let another man do the skimming for you, huh?
No, they go too deep. I can stir that up in there and it won't never come back up there anymore. It'll just go through your molasses. And you can see green streaks in them all the way through them. And they're bitter. See, you went too deep. You see what you got there? Well, now I've been trying to show you how to do that. See that right there? Just the top.
What do you do with the skimming?
Worm, cattle, and hogs.
When Ray Schuler makes molasses, nothing's wasted. Any leftovers are used for silage, and the heads of the cane are used for chicken feed. Ray even makes good use of the molasses while it's cooking.
Had to cook it just from a distance of jiffy. Sweet potatoes, boy, they're good cooked in there.
The color of the cane got something to do with the color of the molasses?
Now, dark brown they make dark molasses. A light sandy long one that's bright molasses. Of course, now if you make it dark, real dark, you got blackstrap molasses.
Is it better if it's darker or lighter?
Well, the taste usually don't have, the color don't have nothing to do with it. If you've got the taste there, well, that's the bottom line, the taste. See that? Now, boy, that's looking good right there. Think it ain't prettier molasses than that. I'd like to see them.
I was about 60, 70 years old when I first went to make it.
Back then you had to make it if you eat. You didn't make whiskey and sell it to the big man. You didn't eat.
For years, Euless Roberts of Anderson County made moonshine. The mountains of East Tennessee were blessed with corn, plenty of cold running water, and lots of places to hide. All the ingredients for making the very best white lightning. For some, it was the only way they could make a living. But in the end, moonshining always took its toll. The story of Euless Roberts is no exception. This is the Heartland series.
You never seen a man in your life that wouldn't take a drink of good moonshine. That's good for a cold. You drink enough of it while you climb a locust tree backwards.
Would you ever sell a gallon of whiskey to a man you didn't like?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I've done that right here. And pray for it to kill him.
Did you ever make a batch of bad moonshine?
Yeah. Made a run one time and went back the next day to make another. Well, that run we made, it like to blow it up on us. I jumped up on top of the furnace, had a big old flat rock laying on top of the cap. I sat down on it. And raised up and down and drank it, poof, like that. And there's a big mouse was in the arm of that cap, and he got hung in that elbow.
With the wire curl?
Yeah, finally blowed him through. When he blowed him through, everything settled down. Next day we washed and cleaned everything up. I heard something in that thump cave. I turned it up and looked for the next one went down through is a 2-inch hole. His little head dropped out through that hole. Eyeballs thumped out down on his cheek. Oh, that is the sickest thing I ever seen in my life.
What happened to the whiskey out of that?
Sold it. Yeah, sold it. It's gone, but the moonshine is gone.
Were you ever caught?
Never was. Only thing I've ever been arrested for is drunkenness. I used to drink it, buddy. Whiskey, I run the best man in the world. I've drunk it when I be so drunk and go to bed. Big snakes get up on the head of my bed. Head looking up and down in the face. You can't move. If I believe if somebody come in and touch you or something, that you die. Ain't made to drink, it's made to sell. And it took me a long time to find out what it's for. But I finally did. And when I found out what it was, what it's doing for me, I quit it.
Caledonius Fackler Johnson was born a slave in 1844, owned by the Knoxville family of Colonel Pless McClung. After the Civil War, this newly freed slave made great strides toward racial equality. In 1922, the townspeople named this park in his honor. It's much smaller now than it was then, lost to the growth of commerce. But that probably wouldn't have bothered old Cal Johnson. He was one of the most successful businessmen Knoxville has ever seen.
After the Civil War, blacks flocked to nearby towns to find jobs and begin their lives as freed men. One of these men was Cal Johnson. He wanted to work, and he was willing to work cheap. His bid was the lowest for a government contract to dig up the bodies of Union soldiers for reburial. For the first time in his life, Cal was earning his own wages.
Cal opened the Lone Tree Saloon here at the corner of Gay and Vine Street. Both black and white customers came here to quench their thirst. Business was booming.
Now he was ready for his next gamble. As a slave child, it was Cal's responsibility to take care of the racehorses. As a successful businessman, he now opened a racetrack of his own. The site of Johnson's racetrack is now known as Speedway Circle, and it's lined with homes, children, and cars. But back in the horse and buggy days, the sights and sounds were much different. But Cal's business success didn't come off without a hitch. After the turn of the century, the first segregation laws were passed in Tennessee.
Did that affect Cal's operations much, do you think?
I don't know, but I would assume that if laws were passed saying that blacks and whites couldn't mingle in eating establishments or drinking establishments or schools or any other public thing, I'm sure that took its toll. I've heard stories that because of his rise to prominence with his racetrack, that some people got racing outlawed in the state of Tennessee.
But Cal Johnson continued to improve his life and the lives of others. He often said he would give up all his money for a little bit of education, and he freely handed out money to young folks trying to improve theirs. His motto was, if you say it, mean it, and if you buy it, pay for it. When he died in 1925, reports say the bulk of his estate went to the church.
If a man who was born a slave can achieve what he achieved from one of the most evil systems the earth has ever seen, that certainly ought to inspire people.
The snake lore of East Tennessee is rich and varied. There's the tale of the mama rattler who would open her mouth real wide when trouble was near, and all the babies would run inside, and she'd clamp down tight until the danger was past. Or the great hoop snake of the mountains, a great big long snake that would bite its own tail like a big wheel and roll down the hill after you faster than you could run. Whether there's any truth to these tales or not, we'll soon find out. I'm Bill Landry, and this is the Heartland series.
Why is there such fear of snakes?
I think it's based on the fact that people just do not know about snakes. In most situations, there's absolutely nothing to fear.
Bern Tryon has studied snakes from all over the world. And as curator of reptiles at the Knoxville Zoo, he sees plenty of snakes from East Tennessee. Bern says stories about hoop snakes and rattlesnakes that gather their young in their mouths are nothing more than snake tales.
Well, I think a lot of it's based on, of course, stories that have been passed down through the families, through generations.
It's always good to check things that are laying on the ground when you're looking for snakes. Something like this old piece of wood here, you never know what might be under it. You have to be careful not to put your hands under it when turning. There's one, it's a king snake. This particular type of snake is known for eating such things as copperheads and small rattlesnakes.
And of the 25 kinds of snakes found in East Tennessee, it's only the copperhead and timber rattler that are poisonous.
There's a common water snake, which a lot of people confuse for the venomous cottonmouth or water moccasin, but there are none found in East Tennessee.
It's easy to tell which snakes are poisonous. You just have to get close enough to look.
The copperhead and the timber rattlesnake
they're members of the same family?
Right, they're pit vipers. And they're called pit vipers because they have heat-sensing pits, and they appear actually as holes that go into the face on each side. Another characteristic is the pupil of the eye. Now, you might be able to notice that in this rat snake, the pupil is round, whereas if it was a copperhead or a timber rattlesnake, it would actually appear vertical, as a vertical slit. and it would be what is called sort of a cat-like pupil.
And of course, the timber rattler has its own special distinction. But all is not lost if a poisonous snake does bite. Burns says probably less than 1% of the bites are fatal, and some folks think it's worth the risk. They actually want snakes close by.
The farmers collect snakes and put in their barn, don't they?
That's exactly right. The smart farmers do. The rat snakes probably do about as efficient a job at controlling rodents as any variety you can have.
Those are the facts about these unusual reptiles. But hey, did you ever hear the tale about the milk snake that used to sneak into the barn and crawl up the leg of the cow and grab the milk?
I wish that native gent would get here with the morning paper. Oh, that must be him now.
Well, it's about time. How are we expected to go on about our daily business without the latest news from London?
These English are curious folks. They traveled 3,000 miles across the ocean to establish a colony here in the wilds of East Tennessee, and still they must have their London paper.
Good morning to you.
Morning. They started arriving about 5 years ago. 1880, I guess it was. Things haven't been the same around Morgan County since. Good morning. Have a nice game?
Oh, yes, jolly good.
Simply marvelous.
Good. It's called tennis. I don't think it'll catch on much around here, but they seem to like it.
The Rugby colony was started by a fellow named Tom Hughes. Back in England, only the firstborn in upper-class families inherit the wealth. The younger sons, second sons they're called, either have to become lawyers, doctors, or even ministers.
So it was Thomas Hughes's idea to take these second sons and anyone else who wanted a fresh start here to Rugby to become anything they wanted to be.
Yes, I'm afraid that means becoming a farmer. I like being an East Tennessean, but I haven't quite caught on to the farmer's life.
Stay with it, it'll come. These fellows have had a rough go of it. 3 years ago, typhoid fever swept through their colony. Then, just last year, their glorious hotel burned to the ground. But even with the odds against them, they maintain a stiff upper lip. This is a brave town, that's for sure. 100 years after the American Revolution, the British are once again coming, this time to East Tennessee.
Oh, sweet and blessed country, the home of God's elect. Oh, sweet and blessed country, that eager hearts expect.
The cemetery at Rugby. Thomas Hughes's mother and many of the original Rugby colonists are buried here. So are the descendants of that noble experiment. The colony was a financial failure, its population peaking in 1884 at about 450.
But the spirit that was planted here by Thomas Hughes over 100 years ago lives on. This library at Rugby is part of a thriving community that is on the National Register of Historic Places. You can visit here year-round. Of this historic landmark in Morgan County, it has been said that you can still sense, lingering in the air, the presence of a melancholy yet benevolent spirit that refuses to let go of the glory that was Rugby. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
They say there's people still believes there ain't no gold in Tennessee. They was hunting gold here before there was in California, you know.
It began in 1827 at a place called Coker Creek in Monroe County. By the 1850s, as many as 700 men came here to seek their fortune. The gold rush was on in East Tennessee. Now, almost 150 years later, a few prospectors still come to these hollers. Men with a pioneer's spirit like Joe Deal.
My first trip has been about 40 years ago. We camped right down there in this holler. So I got down here and I sure enough I found some gold. Yeah, in a 40 years, just about like it is now. I don't find that came away. It's just a hobby. I used to come down here and stay 2 or 3 days at a time, prospecting, hunting for gold back in these mountains. Couldn't hear, sometimes I go 2 days, wouldn't hear another human sound. Nice place for a fellow to come to get away from it all. There's trenches, and there's tunnels, and there's pits dug all over this country down here. All these big gullies you see here, these big ditches were dug with a pick and shovel. The old timers are hunting gold. Like this was done in here in about 1860.
There were some fortunes made from Tennessee gold. Mr. Thomas Cooper, who owned a little more than half an acre, mined more than $80,000 worth of gold. And at today's prices, he would have been worth about $7 million.
Yeah, this is what some people call the lost gold mine deal.
You think there's any gold in here?
It could be. When they dug this, they was digging for these quartz veins that carries the gold. They done all this work with picks and shovels. I've heard the tales about one mine where the old Aunt Sam Gilly used to dig her gold. Her husband left her, and she had 4 children. She never would tell everybody where she found it. She'd only dig at night time, and then wash it in the daytime, pan it out in the daytime, and then take it to the store and trade it for groceries. She would never tell. Even they said she was about 98 years old when she died, and she never told anybody where she got it. In the tunnels, if you find any gold, that's where it'll be, of course, rock. But here, it can be in the sand.
That's the way it is?
Yeah. See, if you shake this like that, don't let it. That'll get it to the bottom. And check that, see.
Put it in the sun?
We got, yeah, it shows up a whole lot better in the sun.
You struck the mother lode.
There's some gold. Copper Creek gold.
We'll be done in about 2 hours stripping here.
They can't tell us, but I'm sure the animals, they have feelings, because...
He likes to be called a country vet. After all, that's how he began. 30 years ago, when Knox County was mostly farmland. And as farmland becomes scarcer, so do men like Dr. William Butler, who still travels over 700 miles a week making house calls.
Hello, Doctor.
He treats everything from horses to hamsters.
You gotta go now. Not one way of going this out. We put a tattoo in their ear. Permanent identification.
His father was called a country quack, a man who doctored animals before you were able to make a living at it. At the age of 6, Dr. Butler began to learn the trade. His assignment, a hog in labor.
My dad's hand, his hand was too big to deliver the pigs, and I was along, and he said, let him try it. So I took my hand in and pulled out the pigs. Yeah, okay, we're going to practice to check these cows?
We got about 14 to do today. Dr. Butler works from dawn to dusk, and even then his work isn't done. He's on call 24 hours a day, and almost every night the phone rings.
If it means all night, if it needs, something needs to be done, it needs to be done.
She was open 30 days ago. You want to check her or just run her?
Well, we've checked her. She could have been early then. And
okay.
She's 50 day.
Okay.
45, 50 day pregnancy. How's the cow we saw the other night? Had Dallas grass. Is she about over her?
She's back over.
What do you do when you're relaxing?
Go up the farm, sit around and look at the animals.
How many animals do you have?
Yeah, I've got around between 150 and 60 cattle right now. I've got 3 sows and 26 pigs and 11 fat hogs and 1 boar.
And chickens?
Yeah, it'd be hard to count them. I say 150 chickens.
Turkeys?
I believe it's 9 turkeys.
Goats?
8 or 10 goats.
You got some dogs?
We got, well, I think dogs and all, we probably got 10 to 12 or 15 maybe. Charlie's our pet bull. We delivered him and he was freezing, so we brought him back to the clinic, and when he was about 3 months old, I took him away from the clinic and took him to the farm. I went back that night to check on him. His whole face was wet with tears. We'd stand there crying. I opened the passenger door and he climbed right up in the truck and rode home with me. Sometimes I think some animals, especially your dogs, your pets, show more compassion than some people. There's not many people get up 3 o'clock in the morning and go with you when you're going out on call.
It was called the Hog and Hominy State. For in 1840, Tennessee led the nation in corn production. Corn brought the best price when it was on the hoof.
Livestock, worth twice as much as the price of cotton, was driven across entire states to market. Each year in East Tennessee, over 180,000 animals were driven along the banks of the French Broad to Asheville, where they were sold at market.
Mostly they were hogs. Once a year, our grandfathers moved them to market.
A pig is a very contrary animal, and I'm going to try to move him from right here, right down there. This one here. Come on, pig. Well, get on there. These old pig drivers, there he goes. Get over there. Yeah.
They're faster than a cow or a horse, smarter than a dog, more single-minded than any mule. It's just tough to convince a hog to go anywhere it doesn't want to.
Whoopee, whoopee. Get over there. See, he'll just go right where you tell him. Get over there.
Today, with a lot of help from our friends, we'll try to have a hog drive. To have a hog drive, you've got to have drivers and a drover. These are ours, proud southern herdsmen like their forefathers, with names like Burnham, Watson, Meadows, and Sullivan. You've got to have dogs. We've got one. Doc here. He's not at all sure of this. And a horse.
Here comes a horse.
What do you think we'll get into here?
A lot of mud, a lot of squealing. I'd say we'll get muddy. I ain't seen a clean hog.
Finally, you've got to have someone who knows what they're doing.
You just have to get them all lined up close together and get them to take off.
We only knew one way to get it started.
Let him up! Put him out!
Come on, Pig. Come on. Come on. Good. Come on. This way.
Hogs were probably made quite a bit different. They probably had a lot of wild hogs mixed in with these hogs that were used to traveling long distances and doing without food for long periods of time.
For these 20th century men, this was a day's adventure. But for their Scotch-Irish forefathers, it was a way of life, one they'd inherited from a faraway Celtic land.
Come on, babies.
Decades before the great western cattle herds, along game trails, by the hundreds, the thousands they came. Hundreds of miles they were driven to feed the great plantations of the South. An entire economy was built around them.
Come on, Pig.
I want to put him in.
In the end, the railroads came, and that ended the drives. Drivers and drovers and their kin returned home, this time to stay. The great hog drives were gone, but the hog and hominy state, Tennessee, had earned its name. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.
We'll have a time tonight. Hold on, we're going to open that jug when we get there.
It's not nothing to brag about.
You start in the wintertime, fixing your plant bed, and then as it warms up, you start setting out, and then hot part of the year you start harvesting. And then time you get over here to market, it's cold weather again.
But the months before market are some of the most worrisome. It's December when the farmer sells his tobacco that he learns if he's made money or lost it.
Well, we've been lucky this year to get it graded off like we have, don't you think?
Yeah, it's been too dry.
It's right pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right pretty, just about right for it.
A couple of months, we'll just have to start all over again. Be times sow those beds again.
Yeah, it won't be long. Be careful now, it weighs about 400 pounds, boy. Heavy now. Yeah, just a little while we'll be over there. What we've been looking for, the old payday.
Come right on in. Looks like you got a good crop of tobacco, Mr. Saunders.
That's right. It likes dry weather and a lot of sunshine.
That's right.
About the same amount of work as it was 25 years ago.
That's right.
Well, there's another crop.
There's another crop on the floor.
Get it weighed in and see how much it weighs.
Come out.
That's right.
Y'all have much rain this year?
It rained ever since 1st June to the middle of August on it. Just about every day. Too much rain.
Well, they always say dry weather, rain will kill you and dry weather will scare you to death. 2,664 pounds. And that'll sell December the 4th at 10:30. I appreciate it.
Hey, 61, 60 $, I had said. 60, 60 $, 59, 99, being 59 $, oh, I Western. Oh, X1 to play. X1 to go now. You can't get it no less. 61 $, can you send it? $1 a rental. Put 59 rentals on it. Let's go.
Okay, so you hold that in
58, it's a little bit soft.
58, 10X soft.
Ah, range is the tightest now I've ever seen.
What's 59? He got 50. I'm gonna sign. I'm doing the best I can, shoot.
All right.
We got to help these old farmers because they're just on the verge of bankruptcy.
I know it, and I am too.
Tobacco money used to buy the family's Christmas presents, but nowadays the money just keeps the farm in business.
$5.93.
I like to put out a little bit every year. Had to have to pay the bills, insurance and taxes and payments on your machinery and everything. It's about over with now till starting of the new crop. We're about the end of the road.
About to get there.
The cold December breeze carried the smell of pine, hickory smoke, and fried pies. The scent of Christmas was in the air. For Del Schubert, it was an odor he chose to ignore. It had been one long, hard year for the Schuberts. Never had they worked so hard, Del thought, and had so little to show for it.
Come on, come on!
Each year he looked forward to taking his son Jacob out to the stand of cedar to find a Christmas tree.
This is the one.
Finding just the right tree was all Jacob could think about.
Well, that one.
The branches had to be high enough off the ground so that Santa would have no trouble fitting all the presents underneath. But Christmas would be different this year, painfully different, and only Del knew why. There would be no presents under Jacob's tree.
Mama, we found the tree. Del?
The boy knew nothing of crop failures, banknotes, and debt. He knew about Christmas. He knew about the North Pole. He could name all of Santa's reindeer by heart. Often Jacob would dream of one day having a reindeer of his very own. On it he would fly away to distant lands, far beyond the coal fields. How do you tell such a boy that Santa will not be coming this year? The Schuberts had never known a colder Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve. The house was quiet and still, everyone fast asleep, except Del. Christmas morning would soon arrive, and Del had nothing for his son. His boy had gone off to bed, waiting to hear the sound of Santa's reindeer. Del couldn't shake the thought. He had never felt so helpless. Then it happened. There, on the hearth. Yes, that just might work. It has to. The part of Del that still believed in Christmas had taken over. With a father's love, he worked hour after hour. And as he worked, his troubles faded away. A child's dreams had taken their place. There was still much work to be done and only a little time left. His hands, which had labored in coal, now crafted wood as if they'd been born to it. Just before daybreak, it was finished. Jacob awoke to a Christmas like no other. For there, beneath the spreading branches of the tree, stood the present of his dreams. If Del had ever really lost Christmas, he found it now in the face of this little boy. As Jacob rode his magic playmate, his spirit soared, far away to distant lands, and his father's soared right along with him on that Christmas morning. For the Heartland series, I'm Bill Landry.